Well, hello, and welcome to another lesson of the Beginner's Guide to DXCP course. I'm Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. As always, you can email me, marcelo@headlesscreator.com. Today's lesson, an intro to KPIs for headless and composable architectures, presented by Rohit Ravikoti from Novum. He'll break down the specific KPIs we need to track to make sure our headless and composable architectures are successful. So before we get started, let's go ahead and bring Rohit in and have a quick conversation with him. Rohit, welcome. Glad to have you
Yay.
here.
Thanks, Marcelo. Great being here.
I'm happy to have you here because this is something that a lot of people don't talk about, our KPIs, right? We're always talking about the technical side, content modeling, but we're not really talking about, is this even being successful? And the only really way to know this is if you have KPIs, right? And I know you're going to be covering that today extensively. Before we get started, give us a little bit of your background. How did you get into tech?
Yeah, so, of course, I'm the founder and CEO of Novum. So we're a software agency. And, I kind of started everything, built everything with my own hands. So quite a bit of experience in this
That's
area.
cool. Now, what did you do before that? Were you in
Um,
tech or?
yeah. So, of course, I pretty much technology is my background, computer science major at
Mm.
ASU. And kind of pretty early on in my career, I would say I kind of jumped ship and started Novum.
Were you a developer or what did you
Yeah.
major in
So
CS?
mostly, yeah, I did like software engineering, a lot
Okay.
in like embedded systems and
Oh,
technologies, and then kind of jumped into the web and kind of the full stack modern technologies.
oh, that's cool. Now you're obviously running Novum. But do you miss? Are you developing still? Are you hands on or
Oh
those
yeah,
days are
yeah.
gone? Oh, you are. Okay.
No, still do that. I like to make sure that I'm kind of just on top of things. Of course,
Yeah.
got a team now to kind of support and do a lot of these things.
Yeah, but the best way to manage a team is to be hands on, right? You know
Yeah,
exactly what they go through.
absolutely. I think it's important just to see, just to experience what they're going through.
Right.
If there's any challenges or issues, a lot of our clients are facing, I get some insights into that.
Real quick, just like a sentence or two about Novum. Like, what is it? I mean, you're a software company, but like, what do you do?
Yeah, so we primarily focus on, headless technologies, like custom products. If we really need to go and build some unique solutions out there and DevOps.
I see. Okay, cool. And your main customers are like big companies, small companies, medium.
Yeah, so we'd say like companies that are kind of in like post revenue, like 3 million plus at least, a
Okay.
lot of e-commerce companies,
Yep.
and yeah, like so around that medium size
Okay,
organization.
cool. All right. Well, I know everybody wants to hear all about KPIs. So I'm showing your slides here. Rohit, I'm going to let you get started. For those of you watching live, you know how this works. In the chat, put any questions you have. I'll jump in and ask Rohit. Rohit, I'll let you get started, but when I have questions, I'll jump in.
Great. All right. Well, yeah, I'd love to talk about this, and kind of introducing this about KPIs. I know it's something that is talked about a lot, and some people have a lot of challenges kind of getting their heads around, how all of this works, what they are, and why would you really even need to use them. So to add a little bit of context, right? So how we use KPIs, and we use them on a regular basis at Novum is we set KPIs, at the start of every project with each of our clients, and we have a dedicated product manager who keeps track of those and make sure that we're progressing along in the right way, right? And we're constantly aligned with our clients because a lot of times when we start projects, we kind of go in with one understanding. The clients actually require, have certain expectations of what this produces. And in certain cases also we do what we call like performance based pricing. So once we have these KPIs set, we've got everything measured and tracking, we can set like a small bonus aside, right? And if we hit the KPIs, we receive the bonus. If we don't quite get there, so it's kind of like a tiered approach. So this is something, just an additional way for us to really create that alignment get all of the team members too. We share this bonus with the team members.
Quick
So
question on that,
yeah.
because in general, in a corporate environment, they won't do that, right? That's not the typical thing. But is that something you do recommend to do, and how would they even do that? Because I know you're not going to cover that in the future slides, but I mean, do you have any? I mean, I could see like from your company's perspective, but from a corporate environment, do you think something like that is feasible?
There is like bonuses that are given out, right? Performance bonuses and various other things for the team members. So, I think there could be, KPIs that you set on the team level, maybe even on the individual level, just to track how are
Yeah,
they doing, right?
that makes sense.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's a great way to incorporate that,
cool.
and not
Thanks.
not in like a crazy way where it's like
Right.
huge things, but small amounts.
Yeah. Excellent. Cool.
Great. So, I guess like without further ado, we'll talk a little bit about, what really are we going to be covering in this session, right? So we want to go into kind of the why of KPIs, right? What is the purpose of these things? And, really that's going to orient us on how to think about it, right? How do you pick the right ones? And then we'll kind of go into the hows, right? So what should you be doing? What shouldn't you be doing? And some general like good practices. And then we kind of break it down into three different areas of the organization, right? So it's kind of the high level business KPIs, which is really going to be driving what the other two are, which is kind of the technical KPI. So what should technology teams really be focused on? And then, of course, the content KPIs, right? So all of the content creators, the marketing team, the branding team, anybody really who's presenting the company, and how should those be presented. So as to why, right? So really the purpose of KPIs is to kind of bridge that gap, right? Because as an organization, there's a bigger picture, right? You've got the vision of the company or the mission that you're trying to, or a specific problem that you're trying to solve, but that's a very abstract kind of a term. And then you've got like what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis, right? So these are the tasks, and maybe we're producing something. We have a SaaS company or e-commerce. KPIs are really what bridge those two things together. So the KPIs really need to be aligned with where the company wants to go. And then, that is going to drive what you do on a daily basis. So if you need to shift, things are changing, or maybe the landscape is changed, your KPIs can kind of adapt to that. And that communicates to the rest of your team what is expected of them. And they will also, in turn, make the necessary adjustments across the organization. So, as to how we do this, right? Now, there's a few things that we really shouldn't be doing when we set these KPIs. One of those is really around vanity metrics, right? So these are things like number of followers or how many likes did I get, right? Because it needs to be about relevant things that is actually going to push your business forward. And I'm going to talk, in a minute about, kind of the business KPIs and really what are some of the key things you should focus on. But vanity metrics are those things that don't really affect, the key factors of a business's growth, or like the technology and everything else that's there to support it. And of course, if you set too many KPIs, that could end up kind of confusing the team. It could also be overwhelming because you need to be measuring them and tracking them on a regular basis. So, if we're really kind of trying to say, okay, let's just throw everything there and then hopefully something works out, you should probably think about how to cut that back and really focus on what are the most important things that serve the purpose, the vision of your company. And then, of course, kind of building on that, setting KPIs in isolation, right? So I kind of tend to see this in a lot of the technology teams for sure, which is, you kind of go off, you have to build something, but maybe they're not necessarily communicating directly with the business teams or the the content teams, and they kind of go off and set a lot of KPIs that may not be relevant to what the business needs today, right? So if the business is focused on growth or maybe customer retention, and the team is focused on, like something completely out of the alignment with that, maybe they're focused on super optimizing, the server performance, but you really need to focus on, the user experience and putting out some new features. So there's trade-offs there, right? And you have to do it in the right way and make uh, really measured decisions on this. So those are some of the don'ts. Now, what are the things that we should be doing on this, right? So, one of the key things is, and I touched on this, which is alignment. So, making sure that everything that's being done really is centered around where the business team currently wants to go and serving the purpose of the organization. It needs to be measurable, right? So if you can't really set a KPI unless you measure it. So sometimes you can't directly measure customer satisfaction and things like that, but you can measure the different factors around it. And we'll kind of go into what that means, again in a minute. And then they need to be iterative, right? So you can't, it's not about just saying, okay, these are the KPIs and that's till the end of time, that's what we're going to be doing. It's as things evolve, as the organization grows, and situations change. You should be keeping a close eye, maybe every quarter, reviewing, how are we doing on these KPIs, and are they relevant today for us? So those are some of the things, that's there. Now, we can kind of jump in, right? So the three different pillars of most content-based organization. You've got the business teams who are just making sure that the overall company strategically is going in the right direction. Got the technical team who's kind of supporting the overall um, uh, the overall operations, of the content and the business teams. And then, of course, the content teams who are doing the marketing efforts. So for businesses, now there's really like three key factors, right, for the growth of a business. And I think it's really important, right? This may be obvious for some people, but some people who are not involved in the day-to-day kind of really the strategy side of the business, it's more important for them to understand these three things. So that number one thing is really number of customers, right? How many customers do you have? How many customers are you attracting on a regular basis? um, what is the lifetime value of each customer? So, are you making sure that you're retaining the customers, they're coming back to you, and maybe there's additional things that you can do to grow the overall value of these customers. And of course, the risk that you have to the organization. So, are there any factors that are risking the organization's ability to attract more customers, as well as to retain them and creating that? So, usually, risk is things like maybe there's one person who knows a lot of the information. If they're not around anymore, then that's a big risk, right? Like that could be a huge thing that could take some operations down or something else. So that's one. So really making sure that all of the knowledge is institutionalized. There's a clear process so that a new person can come on board and use the systems and processes that you have in place relatively quickly.
Quick
And
question on that, on the number of customers. Also, what about, and maybe you'll be covering this, but customer size, right? Not just the number of customers,
right.
but the size of customers of the company and things like that, their revenue.
Right. So that's kind of what I was kind of covering on that lifetime value.
Right.
And really, yeah, that's like not just how long they're there, but are you able to kind of increase the value, the size of that customer? So yeah, that's a very key aspect to this. And
Got
I
it.
would say those are probably the three important things that the technical teams and the content teams really need to understand,
Mm-hmm.
because the business team is going to be making strategic decisions based on those factors. And even if they're not they're not necessarily important for the day-to-day operations of those teams, you need to know where the focus of the organization is, so that maybe you set KPIs that are aligned with these areas. Um, yeah, and then I've got a fourth one here too, which is really the carbon footprint and the overall environmental impact of your organization. I think this is something that's becoming more important, and more companies are looking at this. And I think more customers are going with companies that prioritize this aspect. So, and I made it kind of like a clear note about revenues, right? Because revenues are more like a result of doing the right, those 3 4 things in the right way. And so if you're looking at revenues, it's probably too late to change it, right? So if you're seeing, oh, revenues have gone down, it's already too late. It's, the purpose of key performance indicators is that they give you an indication early on to to the consequence, which is lower revenues or higher revenues. And kind of an analogy I like to use here is, like if you're kind of trying to grow maybe like a fruit tree, right? You don't start out doing that by saying, okay, how many fruits am I going to be harvesting, later down the line? You have to look at, is the tree getting enough sunlight? Am I watering it properly? Is there enough nutrients in the soil? So there's so many factors you need to look at, and if you do those things right, and if you keep a close eye on them, then you'll get the maximum amount of fruit. So just a simple kind of a thing that sometimes it gets too theoretical. So this is just a simple way that you can really think about. So now, as for technical teams, right? This is really the team that's kind of that pivot point, and make sure that they are supporting the growth of the organization, and all of the other teams involved who need to be using the systems that they build. So making sure that the system uptime is tracked and measured and accounted for, right? So if your system is crashing on a regular basis, that's a big issue. That means lost sales, and the team not really being able to perform their duties to the best way possible, and ultimately the lower revenues. And we've seen this happen so many times where when a system wasn't really designed properly with proper microservices architecture, or various things like that, with proper backup systems, and everything is kind of hosted in one place, things can go wrong. And if something shuts down, you've got a lot of issues there. So mitigating that risk is a big aspect of these things. Security incidents, right? So if passwords are leaked and various things like this, number one, that's a big hit to the reputation of the company, and you can really lose a lot of the customer um, trust. So really keeping a close eye on security. There's various technologies that are available, which just track your code. They give you a lot of deep insights. They scan the vulnerability of your code, and do various tests. So um, definitely looking into that is an important one, if you especially if you get to a certain size. And then of course, like bugs, right, and issues that come up. So now there's kind of two aspects to this. So one is that there are bugs that really you can't, that just kind of come up, and you have to resolve. Maybe some API changes, and then that causes things to break. So you've got to be able to respond to that quickly. So is your system architected in the right way, so that any changes to third parties are quickly found and resolved before the end user really catches up to that. And then another thing really is, are you making sure that you've built systems in such a way that the other teams are able to autonomously do tasks that they need to do on a regular basis, right? So how many times are they having to come and ask the development team or the technology team to make routine changes? So if you're seeing that there's consistent changes that are being asked, it's important that there's a system for that, right? So there's tools like Retool, and like stuff that you can use relatively easily to give like a simple internal dashboard for your team to just do that. You connect it to the different APIs and do this. So, issue resolution time, and then kind of this routine task, and how are you mitigating those things? And then, of course, the speed. So now there's a lot of important things to this. So your site speed not only improves the customer experience, it also reduces your overall infrastructure costs, and ultimately kind of the carbon footprint aspect that we were talking about earlier. So if less processing power is consumed, then that means less energy is there and better for the environment. So this is like a really important one, and there's a lot of techniques that I'll kind of talk about in a different talk, but that you could be doing to really keep a close eye on the speed and the overall infrastructure.
Actually, I'm going to interrupt you real quick on that because I'm glad you mentioned that, because actually I want people to come back next week because you're going to go really deep into performance for headless and composable. So we appreciate you doing that, and I want to make sure people know about it. So
Yeah,
definitely
it's
stay
really
tuned,
important.
or if this is on demand, go back to Headless Creator and check that the next lesson, because it's going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely,
Very
and I think
important
that's a key
topic.
one. Yep, I think we can go into a lot of details on that.
Yeah, cool.
So, yeah, absolutely. And and that's where, I was kind of mentioning this earlier is, when we don't really set the right perspective for the technology teams, we could kind of go on tangents, on, okay, let's super optimize for speed, but maybe that's not the most important thing right now. So let's make sure that it's good enough. And if we're seeing like customer retention issues or not enough signups happening, what's going on there, right? So maybe the system is crashing on a regular basis. You probably want to focus on that first. So, really making sure that the technology team is tuned in, dialed in on exactly what's happening now and what are the current issues that the business is facing is important. And then next we've got, the content teams, right? These are the teams that are going to be kind of really engaging with the customers, and they need to be in tune with um, what they're doing, what are the trends that are going on, how can they really provide value to the customers as much as possible. So making sure that they have everything necessary and they're able to move quickly is important. So user engagement is an important thing for content teams to really keep a close eye on, right? Are people finding value in the content that you're creating? Are they engaging with that? Are they sharing that with other people because they really love seeing the messages that you guys are putting out? Are is the content creator happy in the sense that, like when they're writing the content and doing these things, are their needs met? Are they able to do what they need to do and get things out quickly? And, the process should be painless, right? If they're having to go and ask the technology team every time to make a little change and there's a bunch of delays and it's taking days or weeks to turn around a simple thing, that creates a lot of friction and stress on the team. So keeping a close eye on that is really important, and that's again a key KPI that can be shared with the technology team to make sure that that's being provided for. The quality of the content, again, that kind of leads back to user engagement and all of these things, but is the quality of the content, are people finding value in what you're producing? Conversion rates, of course, right? So this is really important for the overall business, and of course the content team really has the most influence on this, because as users come in, even when you're doing the regular outreach, of course, but when they come into your website or your product, making sure that all of the information is shown in the right way, you're setting the right call to actions and various other factors, and keeping a close eye on those conversion rates is really important. And site speed, again, ties back to this, because faster sites tend to show higher conversions.
Real quick, I am very, very happy to see content creator happiness here. This is something that I feel many companies don't track, but I think it's important to be able to track that. because at the end of the day, I think that creator happiness is very, very much tied to content quality.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
cool.
I think you're,
I wanted to mention that just because it's, to me, it's an important KPI that I think most companies don't even think about. They're
yeah,
always talking
definitely
about the end user, their customer, but never think about that happiness
people doing it.
factor from the content authors. And I'm a
Right.
huge
Yeah.
proponent of content authors and making sure they're able to do this correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. If they're happy, they're able to do their job effectively, then that ultimately leads to much better results.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
definitely.
um, yeah, and then, the turnaround time. So this is what we were talking about. So if if every minor changes need to go through development teams, that's a big issue. So keeping a close eye on that, making sure you track that, is really going to produce good results. Sometimes trends come up, that are just happening right then and there. You need to put something out, maybe on your website or wherever, making sure that you have the agility to be able to do that. Your system allows for that is very key. And then, another one is, again, if sustainability and environmental impact, social impact is a key part of your organization, making sure you track that, right? And seeing that, what are you doing? How much of your content team is really putting that message out and consistently reinforcing that, um, is really important. And, I
On
think
the
this touches on general things, but yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
sorry to interrupt you there. On the content turnaround time, I think it's important that uh, whoever's tracking this to make sure they look at the entire picture, right? If it is slowing down, is to see where are those blocks, because it could be because content authors work right across organizations, across different departments, and sometimes those blockers may come from all those departments, and that may slow down and bring that number down, right? So would you agree on that, or anything else to look
Yeah, I
into
mean,
that?
it's a whole pipeline for sure.
Right,
So, there's a business team that maybe talks about the strategy, maybe there's an approval process. Yeah, you have to keep a close eye on a lot of these things.
right. Yep, definitely. Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the major aspects, right? Like around sustainability, overall quality of the content, how quickly are you able to get it out there, and the engagement. So, um, I think these are some of the important parts, and like I said, content teams and business teams do rely heavily on the technology side. So making sure you pick the right tools, to empower them is very key. So just to kind of conclude on this, right? So KPIs are a very powerful tool. They really are a mechanism that the overall organization and the leadership can use to drive the mission of the company and make sure, that things are being done in the way that they need to be done. So choose them wisely. Make sure that they're very clearly communicating what the team needs to do. Um, and of course, the markers or the indicators of effective KPIs is that they are measurable, they're relevant, and they're actionable.
That's awesome, Rohit. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I'm really looking forward to the next one too, where you're going to dig deep into performance and speed, which is another very important topic. In your experience, how many companies truly implement KPIs to track the success? And do most of them, in your experience, implement most of the stuff you put here, or it's very spotty?
It's usually very spotty, and usually kind of the KPIs that are set are kind of like, okay, what are our revenues today? Or maybe conversion rates,
Right.
are usually there, but they don't really go kind of into the details of, how's your technology infrastructure doing? How's the content quality and these
Author
types of things.
happiness, all those things. Yeah.
Exactly, because I think if you really do set those, you give yourself a little bit of an advantage and an early indicator, right, of problems that come up before your conversion rates take a hit or your revenue takes a hit. So, That's really important, and I wish more teams do this, and I don't really see that being done as much.
Do you see with your customers, do you see better success rates in the implementation of Headless and Composable with those that do have extensive or more robust KPIs than others?
Yeah, absolutely, because it lets them see, kind of it gives them like a real-time view of what's going on. You can
Right,
course correct quickly. So, we've seen some like dramatic improvements just by looking at the numbers, right? A lot of times we kind of just go blind and then we're like, "Oh my God, what happened?"
right.
So, yeah, it's definitely gives them a big advantage.
That makes sense. Cool. Well, Rohit, thank you so much, man. This was great. I'm looking forward to the next week's one on performance, as we said. If people want to get hold of you, the email that you're displaying there, is that the best way?
Yep, it's rohit@novum.io and LinkedIn also. You
And
can
LinkedIn. Yep,
find me
perfect.
there.
All right,
Yeah.
Rohit, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate
Great.
it.
Thank you so much, Marcelo.
And thanks to the rest of you. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Stay tuned for next week with Rohit again. We're going to have another great lesson all about performance. As always, if you want to get a hold of me, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. So we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.